Okay, we're recording. Hello, everyone.
Amazing.
Today we have Barri Cohen from RiseMarketing.uk. Barri, nice to have you here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. So I run Rise Growth Marketing Collective, web address risemarketing.uk, as Lucas just mentioned. I'm a growth marketing expert, although I don't like using that term myself. Doesn't feel humble enough. But I work with startups, I work with small to medium businesses, essentially providing a marketing function, a growth marketing function for businesses that don't have one yet. I guess we're kind of a hybrid between an agency and a team of freelancers. We kind of look a bit like an agency when you look at our website, but reality is we're a team of freelance specialists, around 20 of us now, who will come together to kind of provide the marketing that either you've already decided you need or that we help you define the needs for. And we have been going for about 6-7 years now. And so, yeah, that's Rise.
And how long do we know each other? Probably like 4 or 5 years right now.
Yeah, I think we started working together kind of before I was really going with Rise, actually. So as I was still kind of contracting prior to going full-time freelance. So yeah, 4 or 5 years, we've worked together on almost every project, every business I've been involved in that's involved SEO. You and I have been working very closely together. So yeah, it kind of feels like we're colleagues rather than disparate freelancers doing our own thing right now.
I'm always introducing you as a business partner. If someone is asking.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking about it. I mean, it is a partnership, isn't it? I mean, we work together, business flows between us. We get involved in each other's projects both ways. It's nice. It balances out, and it's we've even been for company Christmas dues now, haven't we? So
absolutely, company Christmas trip together, and
trip to Poland, of course.
Trip to Poland, yes, and future looks bright. So it's once again pleasure and honor to have you here, and we decided today to give a heads up on Google Analytics 4, which is a very hot topic. And as far as I remember today, logging to my Google Analytics Universal, the pop-up that probably everyone knows is showing 44 days and counting. So 44 days to Google Analytics Universal to be turned off and working only as a storage of the past data, and Google Analytics 4 as the only way to track traffic if obviously people want still to be with Google Analytics. So maybe let's talk about this. I know, Barri, that you had with many, you had many businesses, and you are working with many businesses. So at the beginning, I wanted to talk a little about state of play, key issue, and trends. And yeah, please, I'm more than happy to, and very excited to listen what you would like to share with us.
Sure. Yeah, so it's, everyone who's logged in, as you say, to Google Analytics has been seeing that message at the top of their dashboard, urging people to set up their GA4. I don't know about everyone, but I've certainly been getting, on behalf of all the various accounts I'm have access to, also getting emails, getting invitations for webinars and phone calls with Google specialists. So yeah, I think there's very few people that have access to a Google Analytics account that are unaware that this is happening. I suppose the key thing that I'm seeing is that not everyone's necessarily aware of the ramifications of this. You know, they're not necessarily aware that this is quite so imminent, and the fact that they're going to lose their universal analytics, their GA3 data. Well, they're not necessarily going to lose the data itself, but they're going to lose out, there won't be any new data collected via those accounts. So people are starting, I'm getting a lot of inquiries not just in the recent months, but over the past year, actually, businesses being quite concerned about what this is going to mean for them and how to get things set up correctly. I think that most people that have gone into GA4, that have looked at the new setup, the new account, are a little bit frustrated and confused. It all looks very different to the Google Analytics that they're used to. A lot of the kind of the classic reports that people expect in Google Analytics are not there anymore, or at least they're not there automatically. But the events are treated differently. The sessions are treated differently. Everything is using different terminology. It's a little bit disorienting for a lot of people, as it was for me too. A year and a half, 2 years ago when I first started delving into it. So yeah, there's concern. I think it's mostly because people are just not sure whether they're set up correctly, because the Google prompts, when you click on that button to migrate or to set up your GA4 account from your Google Analytics account, takes you through a basic process that will automatically, or invite you to automatically pull in your Universal Analytics events. It will help you set up your new data stream. Again, completely new terminology for anyone used to using Universal Analytics. It will invite you to set up some reports and what have you, but it's only once you start delving into it and trying to find the data that you need to make decisions in your business, as you've been used to in Universal Analytics, that you realize that those reports, those events, they're just not there in the way that you expect, and the data isn't accessible in the same way. So I think there's some frustration. There's people being worried about not knowing what they don't know. And there's a lot of people out there that think they're set up. They've gone through that basic process of connecting their Universal Analytics to a new GA4 account, of having their events automatically migrated over, that haven't actually looked at GA4 properly. They're still happily using Universal Analytics while they can. And it's only when it gets to July and they're forced to only using GA4 that they're going to realize that some of those things they're expecting to see aren't even there, or certainly aren't called the same things. So, but that's kind of looking ahead. I mean, the inquiries I'm getting right now are people just being unsure of whether they're set up correctly and how to do so.
Understood. And look, because we had many conversations about this in the past, and we have still on our weekly, my question is, what would be your thoughts about the benefits? Because people sometimes are frustrated also about why Google decided to retire Google Analytics Universal, when from 2005, if I remember correctly, people were using that's almost 2 decades. It's still almost 20 years. People get used to this. I remember internet, how it looks regarding tracking before. There were either very expensive dedicated tools or really rubbish free tools. I was using, and then Google Analytics, I remember that started using when it was in the beta, it was called Arching, I think. And later Google obviously integrated this with the core of their product, and it started to be one of the fundamental tool that people are using on a daily basis. People get used to, people don't have that much time to learn, but maybe you can tell a bit about benefits, how you found Google Analytics 4 beating Google Analytics Universal.
Sure. Well, I guess so to give people a bit more of the history, the missing link, I suppose. So I think people that have been working with apps specifically might be more familiar with GA4, or definitely will be more familiar with GA4 and the way that it's set up than people that are more web-based in terms of only having websites rather than apps. Because GA4 essentially is based on the framework of Firebase, which was Google's app analytics platform, and it's used by a lot of anyone. Well, initially people building Android apps, but increasingly over years used across platforms, people making iOS apps too. And that essentially is the framework that is now being ported across, and they've expanded on it, and they've made this beast become GA4. And Firebase is still there, and it plays really nicely with GA4. So people that are familiar with Firebase will probably be a bit more familiar with the way things are set up. And if you've got an app, if you've got and you're mostly mobile based, even if it's web based, I think a lot of the way that the GA4 have changed the structure and the terminology, structure of the data, is going to make a lot more sense for you in the way that you think about the experience that people have with your product, your app, or your website. It's more set up for, they think about sessions in a different way. With Universal Analytics, it was all about unique users, new users, and what have you. You still have elements of that within GA4, but it's very much session based. So once someone comes onto your website or your app, what they're doing within that session, and that's really the kind of the cornerstone. We always talked about sessions, we always talked about users, as we will do in GA4, but essentially GA4 has flipped that around. So the session is more important than actually the user, which fundamentally is about people using multiple devices on the same product. So people using classic Google Analytics, there was always the frustration where there was a disconnect between different devices people were using. Someone might initially do their research on their mobile, they might actually go later and make the transaction or give their details on the web, and you wouldn't know that was the same person, or it would be more of a struggle to know if that was the same person. GA4 is set up to be more intrinsically linked to the user and the session, and therefore it gives you a lot more clarity in terms of cross-device usage of your product. So I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of GA4. I mean, the user behavior insights, the reporting accuracy, and user engagement tracking capabilities are all benefits. There are big improvements with GA4. The conversion metrics are, if you set it up correctly, far more accurate and precise, particularly given the changes over the last couple of years with attribution and being able to track people, particularly from iOS devices, and the new privacy elements within iOS 14.5 has made that more of a challenge, and GA4 is looking to address those, as well as taking into consideration those privacy elements within attribution. The security of your data itself is supposedly much better in GA4. There's, as I said, better measurement between web and app, and there's the being able to combine those views into one view, which wasn't really possible. It wasn't possible at all with Universal Analytics. So if you do have both a website and an app, that's going to be a game changer for you. It thinks about content in different ways. So the way that it groups together the content on your website or within your app, you can group those together with more flexibility and look at how people are traveling through your site or using your product in different ways, which will give you a far more realistic view of how people are actually navigating and utilizing and engaging with your content. It's also much more, it's easier to create user journeys and funnels. That was always a bit of a frustration of mine using Universal Analytics, in that you kind of had one shot to set up your funnel, and it didn't really consider or take into account other scenarios within that funnel, and would quite often you'd end up with gaps in the data. GA4 makes it much easier for you to create a whole variety, a multitude of funnels, however you wish, to get a better view, a more realistic view of how people are going through your site.
So something is telling me that you are kind of moving here in this story into the explore model, explore section of the Google Analytics. Maybe we can tell a few words, because I think this is the major misunderstanding between how GA Universal was working day to day and how is GA4 working. So obviously in GA4 we have reports and explore reports and explore sections, and maybe you can give a bit of light here to our listeners what's the difference and how to use this daily basis?
Yeah, so one of the key differences, and one thing you're going to notice, or anyone looking at GA4 will notice for the first time, I mentioned it earlier, is that all of those classic reports, all of those various tabs on the left-hand side in Universal Analytics aren't there in GA4. You've got a very limited set of options on the left-hand side now. But one of those is Explore, and this is where all of your reports will be. But you have to set those up. There's a whole bunch of templates there that Google have obviously put in to try and replicate some of those reports that are in Universal Analytics, but a lot of them that are not there. A lot of the granularity, a lot of the types of filtering won't automatically be within those templates. So you can set up all of those basic reports and you're going to get a lot more insight, and you'll feel a lot more at home once you've done that using GA4. But there's going to be missing elements. You're going to want to look at your events in slightly different ways, maybe looking at parameters. So one of the common frustrations I've seen, and actually I found it myself when I first was looking at GA4, is that with Universal Analytics, an event is set up with a category, an action, and a label. That doesn't exist in GA4. Every event is just the event name and then an unknown or an unlimited number of parameters that you can set up, which is actually the way, again, this is kind of goes back to GA4's Firebase roots, being app driven, the way that most app developers would always generate and fire events. And most web developers do too, but Universal Analytics kind of dictated how they did that. But yeah, so you essentially have a lot more flexibility, a lot more data that you can pass through as part of that event. However, those reports will just tell you automatically the event. So for example, this is a classic example. You could easily create a report using one of those explorations, those templates, that will tell you where all of the sources for all of the events firing on your website. But one of those events might be form submission. So someone who's submitted one of your forms, which is great. And in Universal Analytics, you click into form submission and automatically see all of the different labels and that might be based on the URL or some other parameter. And you would see the action, or, you would get more insight into what type of form it was. And you might have multiple forms on your website. So you wanted to see whether it's your contact form or your lead form or whatever it might be. You can't do that in GA4 automatically. If that event is being pulled through from Universal Analytics automatically, that attribute, those parameters, you can't see. You can't necessarily. So you would have to create a report specifically filtering through the parameters that are coming through those events. And that's not part of those existing templates. In terms of the ready-made ones, just click and fire. So you would have to go in and play around with those a little bit to create that extra filtering.
So how you are sorting out this challenge?
Well, so anyone that has used Google Data Studio, or as it's now called, Looker, will be familiar with the style of these reports and the way that the options that you get given to manipulate them and create new ones. So essentially we've been, the way around this is to generate more of these reports, more of these explorations, but to be quite creative and to go into the finer details, obviously understanding what information you're looking for, what questions you have that you want to be answered, what decisions you're looking to make off the back of it, and generating unique reports to your business that will define that form submission in the way that you need, or to understand where they're coming from, or what country they're from, or what language they're in. All of those elements that aren't necessarily available to you immediately in GA4. The other side of that, though, is that Looker, used to be Data Studio, is still far more powerful, still gives you far more options, and of course allows you to blend the data from GA4 as well as other sources. So maybe from your Search Console, maybe from your Stripe account, you can utilize other data sources, including other ad channels that aren't automatically being pulled into GA.
So would it be fair to say that? Yeah, would it be fair to say that, for example, you and your team, when the client is coming to you, you can not only configure the Google Analytics 4, but also build a set of dashboards which potentially would answer on 90% of these questions that people have every day.
Yeah, so yes, the simple answer is yes. The first port of call is using the explorations within GA4, and obviously making sure that the reporting is trying to meet the needs of the business as much as possible within GA4. And then obviously the other side of that, I've had clients come to me requesting Looker dashboards, Looker data studio reports that look more like universal analytics, because they find, they want to see the data presented in a similar way, which is very understandable. So we have we've been creating reports that mimic to some degree. Obviously, we don't want to try and create data that doesn't exist anymore, but to some degree mimicking what they're used to and the way they're looking. They want to see certain information side by side within Looker reports, Looker dashboards, and we've created some pretty powerful dashboards so far that not just look a bit more like universal analytics and present the information in a similar way, but also go way beyond that in terms of, where you've got a really well set up GA4 account. It's actually significantly more powerful the way that you can track different types of events that are happening on your website or your app. So it allows us to import a lot more data automatically from third-party channels like Meta ads, for example. We've been creating a lot of very powerful dashboards that are quite exciting, actually. I mean, I think honestly, I think a lot of people, when they first get their teeth into GA4, hate it with a passion. And nothing's where they want it to be. I think I still have my moments, if I'm being honest, when you're just trying to use GA4 on its own. But it won't be long. I think everyone's going to love GA4. I think as much as, there might be some cynicism about, it tying you into other Google products like Looker. A lot of people that have never used Looker or Data Studio historically are going to start using it now. A lot of people that weren't using, although there are probably far fewer of these people, that weren't using Google Flag Manager are going to be using that because it's a lot easier to set up your specific events and other data variables in GA4 using data tag manager. A lot more people are going to be using that. So I've seen some cynicism from some people about, this is another play from Google to get you using more products of theirs. However, this is a more powerful solution. It's kind of, I think people will end up loving it. I think people, once they've got it set up correctly, they've spent the time learning and understanding that they're going to start realizing that GA4 is the way forward. Well, it is definitely the way forward because Google are telling us so, but that it was a good decision from Google to do so.
Brilliant. So I think from what you're saying, I believe that many listeners of us at the moment may feel a bit of relief that it's not as a big monster as it looks. It's a monster that can be controlled. Would that be the main message we're trying to send right now?
Sure. I mean, I guess the main message that I would like to get across, if there is one, is firstly not to leave it too late. Don't try and delay the inevitable. Firstly, set things up, have a good look around, do some type of research online, of best practice and what have you. Fundamentally, this is an opportunity for every business that we've got this process of essentially we can reassess all of those events that we're firing, all of those goals that were in universal analytics, many of them useless or not being used. This is an opportunity for most businesses to take a really good hard look at what is important to their business in terms of what they need to understand to make decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then assess which of those events, which of those goals they want to see going forward. And maybe there are a whole bunch of additional ones that haven't been set up correctly or not at all in their existing GA account that they can now make sure are implemented within GA4. So this is an opportunity for most businesses that is being forced upon them, but it's going to be worthwhile in the future. So it's an opportunity, I think, rather than, well, they won't feel like that for many people because we're being forced into it within the next 44 days, apparently. It is an opportunity though. So yeah, don't delay. And the more people can familiarize themselves with the way the GA4 works and the limitations of it, the better the decisions they can make about how to resolve any issues they might have.
Absolutely. And I think also worth to mention that if this is a critical for everybody, then there is no one more in this critical area than e-commerces predominantly, isn't it? Based on Magento, based on Shopify, based on WooCommerce. I think this is also different split, which is quite interesting, different split of what scripts are the most popular per countries. I can see that in Poland, for example, PrestaShop is very popular, when in UK I feel like WooCommerce still is a dominant one and Shopify over Magento, but I haven't seen the stats. But all these website owners potentially should really act fast if they didn't yet. Would you agree with me?
I would agree, and don't necessarily trust the integrations that Shopify, for example, will offer you without checking. Hopefully they will do everything you need, and at the very least, they're going to ensure that all of your e-commerce data is going through, so you'll know which product, which brand, which variant, the value, and all of that valuable, vital e-commerce data is going through. But they won't set up any reports for you. They won't give you access to the data in the way that you want to see it. You won't necessarily be seeing or have access to the information that you're used to in Universal Analytics. So don't just click and go. Check that the data is as you expect. And if it's not, then obviously that's the time to do something about it.
That's the probably time maybe to hire someone who can help. And I wanted to ask you, Barry, where people can catch you up, where people can find you, when can they ask a question, if it's a good time to maybe arrange short call to have a chat, and then you would give them next step, where they can find you.
Sure. I mean, obviously there are lots of people out there offering GA4 support. If you Google GA4 migration, I'm sure you'll have plenty of options, but it's something that, yes, I'm doing a lot of, and I'm offering it as a service. So visit RiseMarketing.uk, and in the menu you'll see GA4 migration underneath services. There's a form on that page once you've read through, and a link to book a 20-minute session with me or one of my colleagues to talk through where you're at and what needs to happen, and to decide whether it's something we can support you with. But yeah, visit my website, risemarketing.uk, and look for GA4 migration. Get in touch with us.
Any social media they can find you? Some people are looking also there.
We're on Facebook and LinkedIn. So yeah, reach out to us. Just look for Rise, the Growth Marketing Collective, and we'll appear quite quickly. Reach out to us on direct message or post something, and we will get back to you that way too.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I think that was very encouraging for many people, and I just wanted personally to say thank you for your time. Look, I think this is not the only one topic that we will be sharing in the future. So everyone stay tuned, and yeah, thank you for your time, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.